How can a retro revival beat-em-up stand out in an era where the genre is becoming saturated? Power Rangers Rita's Rewind has recently released at a time when everything from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles to The Karate Kid and even Toxic Crusaders are getting one of these, alongside a plethora of original indies and compilations of arcade legends offering to scratch our belt-action brawling itch. We're frankly spoiled for choice, so Rita's Rewind has to really impress us if it's going to grab our attention. We've had a couple of Power Rangers games over the past few years. Some, like Battle for the Grid, have been much better than expected, while others, like the now delisted Mega Battle, were a massively disappointing cash grab. With a track record at both ends of the spectrum, it was hard to know what to expect from Rita's Rewind. I'm happy to report that this game is mostly solid and, generally speaking, a good time, with some asterisks and caveats. We have 3 gameplay styles, the belt-action brawling we bought the tickets for, super scalar-inspired vehicle stages that give off a Sega Saturn vibe, and first-person Megazord duels. Let's start with the core battles. Jumps are on the south face button, dodging is on the east face button, screen clearing special attacks are on the north, and our primary attack button is west. Having one attack button does limit our versatility and combo potential. Thankfully, it can be combined with directional inputs, jumps, dashes, and dodges to provide some variety and level of strategy to battles, while maintaining a pick-up-and-play low barrier to entry for younger family members. The action is satisfying. The visual and sound effects plus the enemy's reactions give a nice crunchy weight and sense of feedback to attacks. The dodge and dash allow us to get across the screen at a good pace, and there's a fairly large range from which we can strike. There are, however, some frustrations. In the cemetery level, the fog obscures pitfalls a little too well. Both the carnival and rooftops introduce missiles that will interrupt the flow of combat and see us getting juggled. While there are warnings and indicators for these, it can be hard to recover once caught. In terms of bosses, while most have recognisable patterns and put up a fair fight, the double boss battle against Chunky Chicken and Turkey Jerk felt unbalanced in single player and much fairer in co-op, where the team could divide and conquer. I also had trouble against Madame Woe, whose ice breath comes out with little warning, affecting a large area, and whose hair could grab me from seemingly anywhere without warning. It was a very frustrating fight that cost me 2 lives. I'd have liked to have seen a better tell or wind-up animation. I'm torn on the Rangers' unified playstyle. While they all have adjusted sprites and animations to distinguish them, they feel the same to play as. On the one hand, this greatly reduced arguments. It's hard for any of us to get angry about our favourite character being picked by someone else, because they're all basically skins of one another. On the other hand, some variety could have added replay value for single-player mode, better defined roles for multiplayer sessions, and helped convey the Power Rangers' personalities. Bring in Zack's dancing, making him an agile high-combo fighter who weaves in and out of the battlefield. Emphasise Kim's gymnastics and bow by making her a ranged fighter who can dodge further, jump higher, and strike from a distance, but with lower defense and fewer close combat options. Maybe Billy can use gadgets and be a more technical fighter that can parry enemies' attacks. There are merits to both approaches, but an unfortunate consequence of the road taken here is that, when we finally unlock the Green Ranger, he feels more or less the same as anyone else to play as. He feels like less of a reward as a result. One final gripe is that there's no way to level up your Power Ranger. The moveset you start with is the one you'll have at the end. This can cause the game to feel stale, seeing players getting into bad habits of using the same reliable combos because we're not given anything new to experiment with. It's something that helped keep Shredder's Revenge fresh, and even the poorly received Power Rangers Mega Battle had this system. An early line from Zordon in the tutorial implies a level up system, with him saying you will learn more about your abilities as you progress as a ranger. It set an expectation for something that never came. Instead, the game tries to keep things fresh by regularly changing gameplay styles. I'm going to put the motorcycles and Zords together here because they're effectively the same. I love the vibe and aesthetic of these. This is very much my jam. Sadly, the gameplay, not so much. It's a classic issue that your targeting reticule and your vehicle's position are tied together, so the only way to land a shot is to put ourselves in harm's way. It also becomes tricky to keep an eye on what we're shooting at and what hazards we're about to barrel into at the same time. Add in sections where you need to do platforming in a pseudo 3D space and it gets clumsy. It gets especially chaotic and hard to keep track of ourselves in multiplayer as there's just too much happening on screen. Everyone's shooting, there are enemies everywhere, we're all sharing the same ground plane, and it just becomes visually noisy to the point of being nonsensical. Although, to be fair, that problem isn't exclusive to this mode, and certainly isn't exclusive to this one game. These sections were, counterintuitively, significantly easier and more enjoyable in single player, which goes against the main reason I buy and play so many couch co-op games. These rounds are also easier as Kimberly because her pterodactyl means we get to fly over ground hazards and are exempt from any platforming sections. The auto-scrolling nature also means we can cheese these levels by having a player 2 join if player 1 is on their last life and low health. I also encountered a glitch here that I'm surprised made it past quality assurance. When one of us died, it subtracted 1 life on death and then another life when we respawned. That meant we effectively had 2 lives to clear these segments, rather than the intended 3. In Digital Eclipse's defense, I let them know about the issue on Blue Sky, and Mike Meeker, the studio head, was quick to respond, asked for more information, and promised a fix. In fact, a patch did come out during the production of this video, so my footage has a mixture of pre- and post-patch gameplay. My wife actively quit the game because of these segments. She said, "I'm here to play Streets of Rage, not Space Harrier." And that's fair enough. She has always preferred games that focus on doing one style of gameplay really well, rather than mixing and matching. It gives her clearer expectations and a more consistent experience. She said she would use the level select to skip these sections on a replay. While I personally don't mind these super scalar vehicle stages, I do echo her sentiments when it comes to the Zord battles. These are in first person and seemingly try to take cues from Punch-Out, but end up feeling more like Rock'em Sock'em robots. We need to punch the enemy enough times to charge the Megazord's sword, and then deliver a final blow. There are 2 phases, one where the enemy fires projectiles at us, and we need to dodge into one of 3 lanes while approaching our opponent to hit them, only for our foe to frustratingly jump away every single time we get close. The other is a melee phase, where we again need to dodge an attack and then counter, but we could never work out which lane to dodge into or the timing, constantly taking what felt like unfair hits. There's only one Megazord, so the way this section works in multiplayer is that the controls are handed off to the next player every time someone fails or fills one of the bars to charge the sword. I was willing to chalk my performance up to myself being a clumsy idiot, but none of us ever got the hang of these sections. Me, my wife, and our kids sadly hated these Zord battles. They were clunky, unintuitive, and we struggled to get a sense of depth perception or distance for when opponents were in range. We would have much preferred classic fighting sections akin to the main gameplay, taking cues from Power Rangers the Fighting Edition on Super Nintendo or Power Rangers the Movie on the Mega Drive. Multiplayer already sees people taking turns anyway, so just apply that same logic here. Multiplayer support is a mixed bag, as actually getting a full squad of 6 Power Rangers is impossible on some platforms. The Xbox and Switch versions support up to 6 players locally, but neither have online support at launch. That will come in a future patch, according to the game's FAQ. PlayStation, the platform I'm on, only supports 4 players locally. In fairness, I believe this is a system-level limitation, as the same was true for Shredder's Revenge. Despite this, we still see a gap in the HUD for a 5th player, with a misleading press cross to join prompt. We might assume we can get more players in via online play, as we could in Turtles, but that same launch FAQ states that online play is restricted to 2 players only. The same is true for Steam. Online is 2-player only, and the FAQ oddly states that its local 6-player mode requires at least one player to use a keyboard. My family plays a lot of these games. It's mine and my son's favourite couch co-op genre, and where the games allow, my wife and daughter or a visiting uncle happily join in. I believe it to be pivotal and foundational for brawlers to have comprehensive multiplayer support. Rita's Rewind does allow at least 4 players locally on all platforms, and the difficulty does seem to scale as players join or leave, but knowing we don't consistently have the option to get a full squad in means that I can't say Rita's Rewind is fully featured in that department as of the day 1 version I played. Speaking of, this video was supported by my co-op partners on Patreon, who are Crow, Tiny Jericho, Mr. Terry Chaos, Ducky Go, Francis T218, and Deliverator. Details on how to join them are in the description. I was very impressed by the game's presentation. Screenshots made me concerned that the fighters were small and lacking detail compared to genre classics. However, they are very smoothly and expressively animated, and their size allows for larger fighting arenas with enough room for a co-op squad. I also adored the little touches and visual easter eggs, such as the Akira slide at the end of the motorcycle stages, or this little nod to 4 turtles bathed in industrial waste. Even the enemies get in on the fun, donning clown costumes and the like to match their environments. The music and sound effects are suitably punchy and retro-styled. Thankfully, while Go-Go Power Rangers does appear, the game doesn't over-rely on recycling that theme, which is refreshing. There's a level of confidence and polish here, with plenty of evidence that the artists involved, visual and audible, were allowed to have fun with it. The game is bursting with personality. This is a good game, made by people who clearly love the property, but it feels like they were hamstrung in a few ways, possibly by the license holders. This is most apparent to me in the story department. The basic plot is that Robo-Rita travels back in time to 1993 so she can help her younger self eliminate the Power Rangers. Events then proceed to play out not that differently to the main timeline. Robo-Rita's presence isn't really felt. You could remove her from the story, have the final boss be against the original Rita, and nothing would change. Sadly, for all the marketing he got, the Green Ranger also just kind of appears towards the end of the game and is swiftly dealt with. He's not foreshadowed or alluded to, he's not a constant looming threat, and while I did enjoy his boss fight, I'm a sucker for battles where the opponent is essentially you, but evil. This version of Tommy actually achieves far less than his main canon counterpart. The post-credits, don't worry, I'm not going to spoil it here, teases a sequel and I hope we get one. There's a very solid foundation here that, with some refinement and iteration, could become something really special. If you're a Power Rangers fan, buying this game is a no-brainer. You probably already have. If you're looking for a solid beat-em-up, it's difficult to recommend this particular one. It changes genre too often, and there are cheaper games that offer very similar experiences. If you've already beaten everything else and you're looking for another one, you'll have a good time here. I just wouldn't put this above River City Girls, Shredder's Revenge, or Scott Pilgrim, and at £29, its price is at the higher end. My overall advice would be to wishlist it and wait for a discount.